Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this episode I'm going to be doing another book report. This time it's A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, published in 1997. And this is the first of my book reports to not be about a fantasy book. This is a non-fiction book, a true story written in the first person by Bill Bryson about an adventure he had in the woods. But before I get down to talking about this book, I've got a quick shout out to make. Smiley Z, thank you very, very much for getting in contact with me. It was extremely thrilling on a brand new embryonic channel such as this to have someone actually interact with me and make a suggestion. This is what I'd been waiting for, so I was really thrilled that you made contact. Thank you. Smiley, you suggested that I read Sarum by Edward Rutherford. I was aware of Rutherford. I had owned the extremely large and very, very red paperback book of London, which, as you probably know, was his second book after Sarum. And sadly, I never got down to reading it. It was on my shelf for years and years, gathering dust. However, because you suggested it, and because I'm very keen to have good interaction with my viewers, I thought I'll download it for my Kindle, and I did. I downloaded Sarum at your suggestion. I started reading it today in the bath. Yes, I know, I take my Kindle in the bath. I'm very daring like that. But I started reading it today and I liked it. So I'm going to continue with it. So far, I like the fact that there are lots of maps. As you know, one of the things that I really hope for when I pick up a book is that there'll be maps in the front. Sarum has lots of maps and it has other stuff, historical things, genealogies. I love all of that. And so far, I'm not far enough into the book to tell you how much I like the story or not. But what I can tell you is that I like the author's voice, and that's all important. So I get a strong feeling that I will be able to finish Sarum, and if I do, I will certainly review it. So anyway, that's Sarum, and my shout out to Smiley Z. Thank you very, very much, Smiley Z. Now, back to Walk in the Woods. I think probably the easiest thing to do would be to just read you the blurb, because this is how I discovered not only this particular book, but this is how I discovered Bill Bryson as an author. Bill Bryson is my favourite non-fiction author, and that's a very small club. In fact, he's probably the only person in it. But I'm sure he wouldn't be lonely because he seems to do quite well in his own company. But anyway, Bill Bryson, who, by the way, I respect and admire as a human being and as a person, as a scholar, as a writer, a researcher, as an inquisitive soul who discovers things because he has a genuine passion and an interest in finding out new things. I love the fact that he's able to collate such a vast amount of information from so many different sources and put them all together into really interesting books. I love Bill Bryson's books. The longest continuous footpath in the world, the Appalachian Trail, stretches along the east coast of the United States from Georgia to Maine through some of the most arresting and celebrated landscapes in America. At the age of 44, in the company of his friend Stephen Katz, Bill Bryson set off to hike through the vast tangled woods which have been frightening sensible people for 300 years. Ahead lay almost 2,200 miles of remote mountain wilderness filled with bears, moose, bobcats, rattlesnakes, poisonous plants, disease-bearing ticks, the occasional chuckling murderer, and perhaps most alarming of all, people whose favourite pastime is discussing the relative merits of the external frame backpack. Facing savage weather, merciless insects, unreliable maps, and a fickle companion whose profoundest wish was to go to a motel and watch The X-Files, Bryson gamely struggled through the wilderness to achieve a lifetime's ambition, not to die outdoors. How could I not pick that up and want to read it? Apart from the fact that I'm incapable of reading aloud, and I apologise for that terrible performance, It's exciting, it's adventurous, it's a true story. It's written by someone who is very, very funny and very intelligent and very fascinated and interested in the world and all the things and all the people in it. And this man decided on a whim to go and walk the entire length of America from bottom to top, from Georgia to Maine, the entire eastern seaboard. It's a crazy thing to do. It's beautifully written. Bill Bryson has a unique turn of phrase. It's a very specific voice and a very specific style of speaking in his books, which is why you can't translate these books into a film. Someone tried, unsuccessfully. A Walk in the Woods, this very book, was made into a film starring Robert Redford and Nick Nolte. And it's terrible if you're a fan of Bryson and have read the book, because everything that makes this good, literally everything that makes this good, is missing from the film. The only thing that remains in the film is the basic story of two men walking in the woods, and that's not the essence of this book. That's just the catalyst for this book. That's the backstory of this book. What makes this book is the writing style, the author's turn of phrase, and none of that, of course, is in the film. One thing that I very much wanted to discuss is the audiobooks of Bill Bryson's work. My favourite reader, by a very long way, is a man called Kerry Shale. Kerry Shale's performance of the Bill Bryson books, all of them, is absolutely superb. He gets all the voices of all the various characters spot on, and he really seems to understand Bryson's voice, not his real voice, his author voice, and he gets it spot on. He perfectly sells all of the humour and all of the descriptive text, and he just reads Bryson really, really well. But he abridges it. He does it himself, and he's very good at it. The abridged versions read by Kerry Shale are very well abridged. You wouldn't know that there was stuff missing. It's very intelligently done and very thoughtfully done. However, if you're like me, you don't want an abridged version, even if it's done well. You want to get the whole thing. You want every little juicy morsel. So it's frustrating, because by far the best reader of Bryson's books is Kerry Shale, but you can only get him reading an abridged version. So there are essentially two options. You can get the versions that are read by Bryson himself, and Bryson, as it turns out, is no more of an actor than I am. He's not a natural reader alouder. He gets through them, but he doesn't have an acting bone in his body. He's not a performer. He's an introvert, not an extrovert. This makes for a very good writer and not a very good reader. So you can get a full unabridged version of his books read by the author, read by himself, but the humour kind of gets lost because he doesn't sell it, he doesn't perform it, he just reads it in a kind of dry style off the page. Now, lots of people, including myself, like his voice very much. He does have a very gentle, very calming voice. His is a nice voice to listen to while you're going to sleep. But I don't want to go to sleep when I'm listening to Bill Bryson, because it's really good stuff. I want to stay awake and listen to it. And I want to be entertained by it, because his writing is thoroughly entertaining. So Kerry Shale is the best reader. Bill Bryson is the most complete reader. But there is a compromise called Nathan Osgood. Now, Nathan Osgood is not as much of a performer as Kerry Shale. He doesn't make it quite as big as Kerry Shale. His voices aren't quite as cartoony. The Nathan Osgood audiobooks are kind of in between the Bryson ones, which are complete but not performed at all, and the Kerry Shale ones, which are incomplete but fully performed. So those are the audiobooks. However, for the true Bryson experience, nothing beats reading it yourself with your own two eyeballs, or even your own one eyeball. Even if you've only got one eyeball is enough to read Bryson. And on that note, I think I shall call it a day. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you next time. See you later.